All right. Here we are again.
Here we are again.
With another book.
Yes. I was going to say, because this is just that it's a very important time of year here at Elle Cordova Industries.
Mm.
In fact, some would say your favorite time of year.
Well, absolutely. I don't know about you guys. Halloween, I wait for it all year. And I just wish it were every month. I know then it wouldn't be special, but I would take it.
Well, I think for you, it's like every time we want to watch a movie, you always want to watch a horror film. And I'm always game for a horror film. But then in October, it's like doubly so, you know? Then we really should be watching horror films. As if you have a scarcity mindset about horror films that even though we constantly watch them, it's like, well, if in October, then we really need to make sure we watch them.
Because there's never a more festive time.
Right. And we do have, do you want to introduce the special guest in the studio today?
The special guest in the studio today is Cordova. This is my little minion. He comes out every Halloween, starting I think last year is when I got him, or the year before. Cordova. And he's very happy to be here today, as you can see.
Adding a sense of festivity for Elle's favorite time of year. Actually, I really like this time of year too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so in the spirit of Halloween, we had some options for the patrons to vote on, all of which were like spooky sci-fi, and the choice was Solaris, which is quite a spooky book, I would say.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
Sci-fi horror, I think we can safely say.
Right. And I think of it, actually, I realized I had this association because I read this. So this is one that we have both read before, one of the few that we have both read before. And the first time I read this was during the height of the pandemic, when this is actually Elle's copy of the book, because you read it and then you mailed it to me where I was perching during the pandemic. So I have this sort of like ghostly sense of isolation just about the circumstances surrounding me reading the book, which is the isolation of the pandemic.
Yeah, reading it in the pandemic would be interesting.
It was.
Yeah, you're already having that experience, sort of alien. Your city becomes alien to you. It's like vacant and yeah.
Right. Normal things suddenly seem strange and bizarre. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think you read it. You read it during the pandemic too, though, right?
Yeah. So because I read it and then immediately sent it to you to read.
And then you sadly thought that you already had it, but then I had to remind you that
you had it.
Yeah.
I had it in my mind that I'd be sending it to you, so I think I was like carefully like, don't crease the spine.
And this one you knew, this is just for me.
This is for me, so who cares?
We don't have to stand on ceremony.
Then I start scribbling my weird little notes in there. I don't think anyone's going to see it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, let's get into Solaris.
Yes, absolutely.
So this is, obviously it's a classic sci-fi by Stanislaw, who is a titan of science fiction, Polish writer. And it's a book, it's a tale of isolation and the unknowability of alien intelligence. So it's told from the perspective of a scientist, a psychologist named Kelvin, who goes to the station to find the skeleton crew that's already there, sort of in disarray. One of the members is already dead. They're being haunted by sort of corporealized memories that the ocean seems to be manifesting. Kelvin soon experiences his own version of this. They call them visitors. His visitor is sort of the memory of his dead wife who has committed suicide, and the whole story is both sort of an anthropological study of this world, this fictional world, but also sort of a character study of, you know, what happens to people in this kind of environment.
Right, and the ultimate motivations. Why are we looking out at the stars? What do we hope to find there? What do we hope to learn about other cultures, or what do we hope really to learn about ourselves?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a really interesting novel, very short novel, really. There's a lot in here that's sort of, I would say, almost like academic. It's like a encyclopedia in parts of this world that doesn't exist, which is interesting. And there's also quite a bit of, you know, character, sort of a blend of the two.
Yeah. So, of course, you know, as we were mentioning, we both read it before. So what are your general impressions? And is it different from the last time you read it? You know, what was your takeaway from this?
I think the first time I read it, I was a lot more tolerant, maybe, of the appendix sort of thing, the sort of encyclopedic exploration of Solaris and its ocean. I think this time I got a bit bogged down. I kind of found myself wanting a little bit more of the like narrative and the character and the story to develop. But it is a really fascinating deep dive into this fictional world.
Yes, I think I actually had more tolerance for that. And,
Okay.
I don't know. This is, even with the academic stuff in this, is not as dry as the stuff that I often am reading. And so
Yeah.
it is a little bit outside. It's like hard for me to picture some of these things that he's talking about. There's one part I really got bogged down in, which is the long description of the formations the ocean is making.
Yeah, so it's like
Yep.
it's like symmetriad,
Yes, and then
mimoids, yeah.
Right, but I mean, sometimes this happens. It's like if anyone has read Moby Dick, there's the famous like whale matter part where there's a long excursus on whaling and various things like that. So that was that. I remember getting bogged down in that part, but this time I knew that it's not the entire book. It does feel like at moments the plot does stop for us to get kind of an info dump on what's going on in Solaris, and it is worked in reasonably well. But
Every time he takes down a book, I'm like, oh, okay, here we go.
yes,
Now
exactly.
We'll learn more.
Right, and we'll in various, there are like maybe 2 or 3 moments in the book where this happens. Yeah.
But I was really struck by sort of the ambiance immediately when he
Yes.
he gets to the station. He sees the disarray, signs of the robots have been put away. There's just the like landing robot that helps him, and then he's not able to find anybody right away. There's like all of the sounds that are described, like the scrabbling around and the way that the ocean sort of looms in the window. It's very like there's a feeling of dread
Yes.
that I think is just so beautifully captured here.
Yeah, it's deeply unsettling, and you're like launched right into the story without a whole lot of preamble. So you, as the reader, are feeling as disoriented as Kelvin, landing, not sure really what's going on, what he's really
From the
doing
beginning.
there. Yeah,
he does like, when are we lifting off? You're already in space. You're already on the way.
right.
And then he's like, oh, have I overshot? It's just immediately as a reader you feel off balance.
Yes.
You don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And you're trying to understand just as he is. You don't know anything. He doesn't know anything.
Yes. And then he lands and he talks to one of the people he finds are immediately Snow in the English translation. I think Snout in the original.
Yeah.
But he meets this guy, and it's just so you know, there are only 3 of us here now. So anyone else you meet, it's like, what? And then there's like blood-stained hands, and then he like goes into the his apartment, and he's like freaking out. The psychologist is feeling unsettled, unmoored, alarmed by the situation, and I also found that that was the sort of tone, that kind of unsettled tone. Nothing really that truly horrifying happens in this novel, but it's very unsettling because of this tone that he's established.
And I remember feeling, why is Snow withholding so much information? Why don't the characters just immediately pool their information and share? And I wonder if it's because you would seem absolutely crazy to somebody. It's like he just has to experience his first visitor. Come talk to me after you've experienced it, because then you'll understand. Yeah,
because if you launch with, we have, like, as you said, what did you put it really well, corporealized memories or something, what you said, corporealized. We're having visitors from our psyches.
Right.
If you landed on the space station and somebody said that would be truly bizarre, and you'd think everyone was having mass delusion.
And they're not having a hallucination, because they can see each other's corporealized memories.
Yes.
So these are real things that you can touch.
Yes.
And seem to have their own even agency and identity. And we'll get into that later in the discussion as to whether or not these things can become their own people.
Right.
And have consciousness and everything. But yeah, I think the mood and the atmosphere were really what I took from the novel. Even the first time I remember looking back at it, I was excited to kind of delve back into that world.
Yeah, it's very much a like psychodrama. It's much all of the most unsettling things are happening arguably are happening in people's minds. They're being tormented. That's the source of guilt that he feels about his wife. His wife now resurrected in copied form.
Right.
Is that's the sort of pain of the book.
And I think sort of the crux of the book, the heart of the book, is the question as to whether we can ever really make contact with an intelligent alien, truly alien being. Something so unlike ourselves. Is it even possible to understand in any way? And like, can you know that thing? And do we even want that? When we're going out to explore the cosmos, are we actually just looking for a mirror, as Snow says in his drunken tirade, which I love. I love that speech.
Kind of like the thesis passage of the book, I would say, wouldn't you say?
I think it really boils down to, like, we think of ourselves as the knights of the holy contact. This is another lie. We are only seeking man. We have no need of other worlds. We need mirrors.
Yes.
It's such a great moment in the book. Like you said, it's the thesis.
Yeah. Because I think it's true that in a lot of, depictions of space exploration, including perhaps our favorite, is people may be interested to know, Elle Cordova is a big fan of the Star Trek series, both television and film.
Sure am.
As am I. And that is very much, that is exactly what they're talking about. So in various episodes and movies of Star Trek, we're going to other planets. We're seeing people who look just like humans with a few little face ridges. And not just because of the special effects budget. We want them relatable. We've got the universal translator, so everybody's speaking English. And then they are like, oh, on this planet, it's actually very similar to was it 1920 Chicago, that one episode of the original series? And oh, in this episode, it's like in the medieval, blah, blah, blah. So we're like exploring the universe, but seeing ourselves reflected back. And I think we can extend this point to the purpose of science fiction, where we're reading science fiction also to look at ourselves, just like we're watching Star Trek to see, like, to think about our relationship to ourselves at different periods in history or different speculative situations.
Our government, to criticize and think about, possible alternatives to our power systems. And
Right. But it all is based on the assumption that you'll go to another planet and that you'll even be able to establish contact, because Solaris is unknowable, unreachable. It's very clear that has some kind of power, as he goes into with the developments of the scientific inquiries of Solaris. It's clear that it has the power to make these incredibly complex formations. That is the power to kind of control that complicated thing about orbiting two suns or something.
Where it shouldn't be able to survive at all, and yet it controls its orbital pattern.
Right, and that's what makes people first interested. Like, oh, how is this planet surviving? Oh, it has this kind of ocean that somehow is controlling things. It can make these beautiful things. It can make copies of various, you can interact with the ocean in this interesting ways. But then
some power of telepathy.
Yeah,
it can look through our memories and in exquisite detail.
Right, and then here it is extended further because they, the impetus for what's happening with the visitors is when they like beaming a little hitting the ocean with an X-ray, and then it seems like this was in response to that gesture. So even though it has all these powers, there's no way to access it, and they fail basically the whole time to really get in contact. There's no way to do it.
It does seem realistic to me that their response to repeated failure to make contact would be, well, let's just bombard the shit out of it.
Yeah.
Let's just nuke it. Let's throw a bunch of radiation and just see.
Yeah.
Because if it's not understandable, then it's not, then it's not close enough to human to really worry about.
Right.
Like, let's not worry about whether it's in pain or
no. And then by the time Kelvin is arriving, as they kind of go through the history, like Solaris is this kind of dying field because no progress has been made. Everything that they know about it, it's like, don't they say somewhere it's like just a series of negatives? It's not this, it's not this.
Right.
You have the sense of all these branches of science, and even things like philosophy and psychology, which would be soft science, right? Like hard science, soft science, even some humanities cannot penetrate what's going on.
The only way to really even understand it is aesthetically. Yeah. Like you can approach it with an aesthetic eye and see that it makes these beautiful formations, and that's really all we have.
Yeah, and then they go these images of the scientists going in and recording these things. It's so complicated, these formations the ocean is building, and they're just recording this data. And then there's that little thing thing where like a child is like, so why, in one of those scholarly parts, there's this little scene of a child saying, so why is it doing that? And everyone's like,
Well, we don't know.
we don't know. We have no idea.
Yeah.
We have all this data, but we have no narrative to attach it to. We have nothing, all of the hypotheses are failing. So
Yep.
by this point, then that's perhaps why the crew on the station has decided, let's blast it with an X-ray. And then they did certainly get the ocean's attention
Yeah. Yeah.
with the visitors. But yeah, that's a really provocative and fascinating thesis, and I don't think it's explored. There's not a lot of other works that I personally can think of that have this. There's this kind of assumption that we can make contact, we will make contact, and it will be a meaningful exchange.
What if it's not?
Yeah.
What if it's just not meaningful?
Yeah, and it's not aggressive, not
Yeah.
not purely benign or purely aggressive. It's just like,
Unknowable.
yeah.
And how frustrating that would be.
Yeah.
It's almost better to have it be knowable, but then aggressive or, a threat,
can
because
do
at least we
something
can
with it.
understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a fascinating idea. And I really like how Lem reveals information to us. I really like, it's that classic, like, and then there's something wrong in the lab. Let's read the notes. Let's read the field notes. Let's listen to the audio recordings. And, we're interviewing the other people, but they're withholding information. It feels very like there's a mystery about it, and which echoes the larger mystery of the planet itself. He's having to uncover what he can about the state of the station as we're trying to uncover what is this planet even, what is the ocean even about.
Yeah, and then I love that interpretation. And then adding to that is the fact that we don't really get the full explanation of what's going on. So the visitor that we spend the most time with is Rhea, or the copy of Rhea,
Or
Kelvin's,
Hari in the
or Hari
original.
In the original, Kelvin's deceased wife. But then the other members of the station crew have visitors, and the only other one we see clearly is it Jabarian? Is that how you pronounce his name?
Which is a very unfortunate and racist.
Yeah, well,
I forgot that was in there.
yeah.
Very unfortunate and racist portrayal of, unfortunately, a black person,
Yes.
black woman.
Right. I think this is in 1961, and so
Even for this early 60s, that felt particularly uncomfortable and really surprising, and it just was very jarring.
yes, yeah, it was extremely jarring, and it's notable that we'll talk later about this, that neither of the film adaptations
They drop
it
Yeah.
immediately. Right. And so we'll have more to say about that, but that caricature, that the image of the black woman who is visiting Jabarian is the only other visitor we see clearly. So we don't even know what Sartorius, one of the other station crew members, seems particularly tormented. We don't really ever get a clear sense of what's going on. We don't see Snow's visitor either.
No, I think we see like a straw hat.
Yes.
That belongs to one of that's
Sartorius's.
Sartorius's
Yeah.
visitor. And then I got the sense that one of them was a child.
Yeah.
Or a small person
Yeah.
of some kind. So yeah, they're very secretive about their visitors.
Right. And we don't know. So it's like a mystery that will remain unsolved.
And it almost doesn't, I kind of understand why we don't see the visitors, because it clouds up the narrative in a way. Like we have this hyper focus on Rhea,
Yes.
on our main character Kelvin's, trauma.
Yes.
With his past. And then I think if we were to have to explore every one of the visitors and every one of the characters and their visitors, then I think that becomes a much larger and more complicated story. And I
Yes.
don't know that it needs to be.
No, I think it works, but it does there's like kind of a little bit of it's unsatisfying in a way to read, just as their attempts to understand the planet and the ocean are unsatisfying. They're, even at the end, it's, as we'll get into later, it's where we don't really land on anything.
Right.
But we do learn something.
Noisy little street.
Noisy little street. We do learn about Kelvin. So it's an inward exploration, even if the outward exploration proves kind of fruitless.
Kelvin also, it just struck me, is the same name as our scientist in iRobot. And kind of a similar figure, right? Dr. Kelvin?
Oh, I forgot.
But it's spelled differently. Kelvin
that like slipped
Yeah.
out of my
She's,
mind.
Remember?
Oh,
Frosty Girl?
Frosty. Well, how could I forget? I
Yeah.
felt so seen. Yeah. Frosty. Yes. Yeah, should we talk about the characters? So we're positioned in Kelvin's mind. We stay
He's
very
a psychologist.
Yes. We are only have access really to his mind.
Yeah.
So, he's coming, he's disoriented, he's a former colleague of Jabarian's. His sort of confusion becomes our confusion. And then we have some of the other characters, and they have these like I don't know if it's just like, is this 1961? The book is written. So it's like these men on the station seem to have like absolutely no personal connection to each other.
Yeah.
They're just like, it actually reminded me, what are the like Tweedledum and Tweedledee characters in iRobot? The two dudes who are like always together, but then they don't have any, it's like, is that what friendships are for men? Like being like, let's meet in the lab in an hour.
I think Sartorius is supposed to be particularly crotchety and sort of keeps everyone at arm's length and isolates. And then I think Snow is supposed to be a little bit more genial, but yeah, they all kind of come off as this sort of cardboard cutout old scientist man.
Right, because they don't have any, there's like no, like a shocking lack of emotional support going on.
Yeah, like I just feel like if it were me on the station, I'd be like, guys, can we just have a real conversation about what the hell is happening to us? Like,
if I'm seeing a visitor, I'm not keeping it to myself. I will tell everyone immediately.
Especially as a psychologist, I'd be like, can we therapize about this for a second?
And even if I were Sartorius or Jabarian or Snow, I would immediately say. But they're sort of like reclusive scientists who it's like they've been working there together for a while, but they have very little emotional attachment to one another. We have crabby Sartorius barricading himself in the lab with some kind of visitor that involves a straw hat, never a clear picture. We have Snow who's like philosophizing and having some drinksies perhaps.
Yeah,
and,
he's having a bit of a drinking time.
A drinking time. Definitely like killed one of the copies of the visitor with his bloodstained hands.
Oh, we should talk about also how our character, Kelvin, sends his first visitor up in the space pod.
Yes.
Who then we have to assume is probably still up there.
Right, yes. So first time Rhea arrives, Kelvin freaks out as one might expect.
Yeah.
She's like not quite, it's the uncanny right, but not quite right. And then
I did think it was pretty quick how he just turned around and put her in that pod.
Yeah, and then was so blasts himself a little, like hit the button, blasting my face off a little to like get rid of her. Yes.
Send her out to space. We're not going to deal with it. I think that was a little quick.
Yeah.
He just kind of did that. I feel like I would have had a few more questions and I would have maybe run some tests and I would have tried to figure that out a bit. No, he's like, get out of here.
But don't you think it's partly because he's already in this heightened state of confusion just based on the environment? He's already like unsettled and freaked out.
But you have to realize, isn't that almost worse than just killing her? You're just like dooming this person or thing to this, existence. We don't know if she's going to be able to survive. She might even be able to survive without oxygen. She's made of neutrinos, so who the hell knows, Well,
the other guys did it too, though. There's like one part, he's like, oh, I see that Snow's like, I see that you like got rid of one, There was the implication that at least one of them had also launched somebody into space.
Oh, I didn't know that they had actually launched their visitor up into space. Or I thought it was like, and got rid of them, but...
Okay, here we go. So Snow says on page 67, you've had a visitor, haven't you? Yes, I answered curtly. He had begun the conversation on a note which I found displeasing. And you've rid yourself of it already. Well, that was quick. He touched his forehead, which was still peeling and mottled with pink patches of new skin. I was thunderstruck. Why had I not realized before the implications of Snow's and Sartorius's sunburn? No one exposed himself to the sun here. I think they've been blasting people into space too, freaking out. That's what I think is the implication of that. Don't you think?
Right. I took that as like, oh, and then they were like out. I don't know what I thought. That they had like put them in the ocean or something. I don't know.
It could be, but I feel like it's that they're like...
Yeah, they did the same thing.
Yeah, that they've also done this. So he does freak out right away, very quickly, launching the visitor. So we've got kind of some unknowable men, because we're in Kelvin's limited perspective. And then but oddly enough, the other character that we know the most is the second copy of Rhea, his dead wife, who he doesn't get rid of.
And because he doesn't get rid of her and allows her to sort of develop and learn about her own identity, then it starts to raise the question of, she starts to change and she starts to become more complicated. And once she realizes what she is, which is a copy, which is a simulacrum of someone who at one point did exist, then it starts to raise the question of like, can this copy be its own thing? Can it be a person with a consciousness? Can it diverge? And then do we have to basically afford it all of the same, moral structure as we would any person?
Yeah, that's such a compelling question. That like, what do we owe these copies? And Kelvin obviously changes because he clearly doesn't feel he owes the first copy anything. It's just this like unwanted, like torturing spirit that's come after him. But then this person, he starts to see her as maybe her own thing, even separate from his dead wife.
Yeah, it's a similar quandary that you find with like clone stories where it's like, okay, so this person is a clone. Once they realize, from the moment of conception onward, now they're their own person though, and they have their own experiences. Like, are they not just as much of a person as the original?
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's an interesting idea. I love this sort of complicated question that he's asking about copies. I do think that maybe the persona or the characterization of Rhea is a bit sexist. It comes off as she's very like childlike.
Yes.
Why do all the women need to be barefoot all the time? I feel like it felt a bit fetishy.
The gender aspect of this is very, I was never too far away from remembering that the author here is a man.
An old white man.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think this like has larger stakes for the unknowability of the planet, because for me, reading this, the only two visitors that we see in any detail are both women. And then so that the ocean, it seems, is gendered feminine within the construct of the novel. So part of me thinks that all these attempts to like rationalize and understand, poke, prod, study the ocean is sort of like all these like masculine fields trying to like probe unknowable femininity.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I think you could absolutely offer that reading.
Not to say that these are innately, this is like, a reading within the world of the novel. It seems like this has been like the irrational ocean versus all these rational planes of inquiry. And that is heightened by the sense that it feels like every single scientist mentioned, every single person on the station with a job there, and all the scientists who are cited as having any experiences, it's just all men. So that's what it feels.
And then
it feels like that.
To make matters worse, the women who are in the book are this sort of like childlike,
yes,
very emotional, sort of hysterical,
dreamed up version,
exotic.
Dreamed up things, dreamed up by these men.
Yeah.
So we've already mentioned. So Jabarian, for some reason, is seeing a black woman who's like highly exoticized. It's a very racist and this is like
really troubling,
very jarring detail.
Yeah.
And she doesn't speak. We don't really encounter her at all. We just kind of see her.
Of course not.
Walking.
She doesn't get a voice.
No, she doesn't. And then and then her presence and then the glimpse of the straw hat suggests that not everyone is having like, unless Jabarian actually knows somebody who resembles that person, it could just, is that
Well,
just
I'm
like
sure
a
he does.
stray thought that
No,
he had? Or?
I'm sure he had an encounter with her in some way, whether
Okay.
it was romantic or not. I think something in his past, he encountered this person and something bad
Right.
happened.
But I think that, because they at one point refer to this as like psychic tumors that the ocean is probing. So I don't think like for Kelvin, it's like this is a beloved deceased person. It's not necessarily the case that every person's visitor is a beloved deceased person. It could be
No.
just some fragment of a memory.
Like he might have accidentally killed this woman somehow,
So, that's unknowable. But then Rhea, whom of course we do hear speak in her two iterations. The second one, of course, much more so than the first. She just kind of comes off as kind of honestly like kind of pathetic, like completely into him and even in his memories.
Dependent on him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course we have to remember that this is all filtered through his brain, which we'll get into later. But that does feel, the sort of gendered nature of that was notable to me.
That she can't even let him leave the room, and she
Yes.
hurts herself trying to get out of the room, and
Yeah.
and then her dependence on him does start to wane as she develops. She
Yes.
becomes her own person, and one might imagine that, like, if the story continued and she hadn't killed herself basically, would she eventually be totally independent of him? Mm-hmm. Like, could he even leave the station and she'd be fine?
Yeah, I mean, they kind of think they kind of land on maybe not, because it's like she would immediately give herself away if they end up going back, right? Because she wouldn't be able, she can like hardly tolerate the separation because of the way, because she's like an instrument of the ocean,
Right.
to examine and understand.
Well, and without
presumably.
its influence, I don't think she would even exist. So
Right.
who knows what would happen if they tried to leave? I don't think she would be able to leave.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of a little unsatisfying. Although to be fair, then she does make her own decision about what will happen to her by deciding to kill herself. So
Yeah, which raises the question, I think we'll get into the movies in a second here, but the 2002 movie, which I felt was maybe the weaker of the two movies, although they both were strange in their own ways, had an interesting point. I think they have the Rhea character say something like, I am suicidal because you remember me as suicidal. Right. Like, raising the question of, is your memory of this person flawed? And then, therefore, this corporeal, like, emanation of that memory is flawed. The original Rhea was more complicated than you remember her.
right.
So then the copy has to be flawed in the same ways, and which leads to her, like, inevitable suicide.
And I think that's an intervention the 2002 film makes, as you were just saying. But I think it's something that we can, like, looking at this novel, we have to realize that there are literally no women that are really present here. These are all, like, women, either we see some memories, Kelvin's memories, and then Kelvin's projections, and then Jabarian's projection of the unknowable black woman who doesn't even get to say anything for herself. So,
yeah, it's a fully male space.
Right. There are no actual women that are heard. It's like even more extreme than what often happens when we encounter texts where we think, well, here's a man representing all these women characters. This is like a man representing other men's
representations
of women.
Yeah,
and
a copy
it's very
of a
notable.
copy. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. What do you think, speaking of copies and imperfect renderings, this is kind of tangentially related, but at the end of the book, they come up with yet another hypothesis to understand what is going on with this ocean. And Kelvin suggests, like, maybe it's this imperfect God that has all these powers to create, but doesn't really understand, like, the wounding power of its creations.
Yeah, do you want to read? Is there, like, a passage?
Yes.
That really stuck out to me, too.
Page 197.
Okay.
So this is Kelvin talking to Snow. He asks him if he believes in God, and then floats a belief in an imperfect God, and then Kelvin says, I'm not thinking of a God whose imperfection arises out of the candor of his human creators, but one, so as an invention, God as a belief system, but one whose imperfection represents his essential characteristic, a God limited in his omniscience and power, fallible, incapable of foreseeing the consequences of his acts, and creating things that lead to horror. He is a sick God whose ambitions exceed his powers and who does not realize it at first. A God who has created clocks, but not the time they measure. He has created systems or mechanisms that serve specific ends, but have now overstepped and betrayed them. And he has created eternity, which was to have measured his power, and which measures his unending defeat. So this idea of this, like, God, because the ocean is capable of creating elaborate formations, and then in the space of this story, these complicated copies of actual people, but it
Not
seems
people.
like, yeah, not. And then also the ocean does not seem to realize the, like, pain these things can cause. It's just like all this power, but very little insight into how its actions are received.
Yeah, and I like that line, like, he has created clocks, but not the time they measure. Because ultimately that's the omnipotent and omniscient God that, we think of when we think of a God. But what if there are these lesser gods, things like the Ocean of Solaris, that have immense power,
Yes.
almost godlike power, but without the, insight, like you were saying, or without, they're not actually creating anything of substance.
No, and they and can't really understand, like missing omniscience, missing, oh, if I create this guy's dead wife, what will that do to him? You know, seeming not to understand. Although I guess you can make a case for, you know, what they end up doing is like beaming brain scans of Kelvin into the ocean, and then the ocean starts like cooking up islands and doing these like even more elaborate things, and then that stops it. It stops resurrecting visitors after that.
Yeah, which I think we're supposed to see as the ocean then understands. Okay, so they don't want the visitors. That was why they did it. Was maybe that we'll get through to the ocean that we don't want these visitors. Or they're like to stop doing that, and it seems to work. But then what I don't understand is, if the ocean has the power to render these things from their memories and is searching through their memories every night when they sleep, why would it need encephalograms? Like, it already can read the brain itself. Yeah. Why would an encephalogram do anything?
Maybe like more if you're like sleeping and the ocean's just poking around in your brain, that's just your unmoored unconscious. But this would be your like conscious stated desires. Although Kelvin sends some really confusing stuff down.
Right. So because it can only read their brains when they're asleep, then Possibly. This is their way of sending their waking brains to.
Yeah.
And there's also the thing about like, oh, what started all the visitors was this X-ray bombardment. So maybe it needs this radiation to like synthesize information.
Right. To actually, but I think one of the frustrating parts of the novel is that we're not given a clean answer of like, so why are you doing this and why did you stop? And we will never get that answer, at least in the space of this book.
And what do we make of the ending? So Kelvin decides at the end, like, I have to stay here. He imagines briefly, like, what would happen if I were to go back to Earth? I'm going to have this existence where I smile at people and I go through the motions of being alive. But he doesn't feel he'll ever be able to, like, live among humans on Earth again. So he decides to stay.
Yeah.
And we see him go to one of the mimoids, like the islands, and he plays with the water for a second, and the ocean plays back, and it's interacting with him, and then it just sort of stops because it gets tired of, it has lost interest in dealing with him.
And many other people have done that before.
Right.
It's one of the frustrating, almost but not quite moments of contact.
Like, oh, that wasn't meaningful. And we didn't learn anything about each other. And then he sees what? What does he see?
It was like looking in the ruins of an ancient town, a Moroccan city, tens of centuries old, on page 202. And he's wandering around. It's this very complicated structure. And then at the very end, it seems like he's not going to leave, as you were saying. So I hoped for nothing, yet I lived in expectation. Since she had gone, that was all that remained. I did not know what achievements, what mockery, even what tortures still awaited me. I knew nothing, and I persisted in the faith that the time of cruel miracles was not past.
So he in a way, he wants Rhea to come back.
Oh, he's certainly, Rhea goes off and like kills herself very much against Kelvin's wishes. And then so they have been beaming his brain scans, and the ocean gets the hint, no more visitors. But now he's like stuck, I think. I think it's a really sad ending, because this isn't I think like a different author would perhaps be tempted to give a trite ending and then he processed his grief through the ghost of the wife, and then he really healed, and then he was ready to move on, and then he married somebody else and started a family. That would be a different author's way of ending. But here, I feel Kelvin is trapped in his cycle of grief, and now he's added the like copy of Rhea to the pile of grief, and he hopes to have some further experience with some copy. He's like psychically not going to be not moving on from this.
Yeah, he has developed this sort of perverse dependence now on Solaris.
Yes.
Which is a thing he doesn't know if it's going to be able to even give him the copy again.
Yeah.
So he's just sitting there sort of in stasis, waiting for another cruel miracle, which is a depressing and dark way to end the story.
Yeah, not only will we not know anything about the planet, but we're not going to know
anything about ourselves.
Right. We're not going to know. We're not going to resolve those they say psychic. Is that what they say? Like psychic tumor. That is still clearly there, and if anything, it's maybe worse than it was before.
Yeah.
So.
Because now he's mourning two Rheas.
Yes. Two who become independent people.
And dealing with the grief of having maybe murdered or like done whatever, cast out this other Rhea that might still be up there suffering.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. Not a place you go to heal, not a retreat.
No, absolutely not.
Hey there, book clubbers. Elle here, interrupting our conversation briefly to bring you to the observation deck. This is a place where you can send in your thoughts and we might feature them here. This month's observation comes from Emma W. This book is a masterclass in creating a claustrophobic setting. Lem brings our main character all the way out to a distant alien planet, only to put him in a crumbling space station where he can't escape his own mind. Even though he is surrounded by a giant ocean floating in endless space, it still somehow feels like the walls are always closing in on him. And so do we think, because part of the question was, this is sort of the last effort to sort of make something of Solaris. And if they're not able to do that, maybe the research ends and they give up on the planet altogether, on Solarisism or whatever it is.
Solaristics or something?
Solaristics, yeah.
I might be missing a syllable in there, but it might be
you're
that.
right. Solaristic. Yeah. So do we think they're going to continue to study this planet? Because it seems to me like everything's sort of closing down.
Yes.
He might just be left there in the end, you know?
I was wondering if like everybody is going to end up leaving and then they, it doesn't seem like they're immediately leaving.
No.
But
Snow is getting the hell out of there, and so is Sartorius. Yeah. They're done.
Yeah, I think I guess you could say, like, maybe you could write up a report about they talk about writing a report, but you could kind of spin the fact that there was some reaction to the brain scan. Mm-hmm. But that will maybe be yet another unsatisfying route like so many others they've had before. Yeah,
because they already had that pilot, right? That, they had that really interesting situation where the pilot crashes and then they see his son, a huge, like, disgusting replica of his son making weird gestures. And the garden from his childhood or something. And they see, like, that was sort of their first real understanding of, okay, so this ocean is able to mimic the memories of a human brain that gets, like, exposed to it.
But that has been discounted. That was not in the official. They had to, like, go to the non-official findings because people didn't believe. They thought, oh, Burton is just nuts. But then we know, of course, that must have been right. And then this is like the next level of that where you have actual corporeal visitors.
And the corporeal visitors happened after the first, like, X-ray experiments.
Right.
Yeah.
More recently. But you already see kind of that's a very haunting part, the logs that they have. I don't know, very thoughtful, very sad ending.
Yeah, and we should talk about how both Grace and I rewatched, or watched for the first time. I would say I haven't seen either Solaris movie.
Me neither.
But we both watched the 1972 Tarkovsky, and then this. So is it Soderbergh that made the 2002?
Soderbergh.
Yeah. And so those both, I would say, really diverge a lot from the book.
Yes.
And I would say in some ways they kind of both leave out the coolest, most interesting sort of crux of the book, which is the question of, like, unknowability. Can we ever know alien intelligence? Should we even try? What does the Endeavor even say about us as humans?
Are we looking for ourselves?
Yes,
out in
are we
the
looking for
stars?
ourselves?
Yeah.
Right. And neither of them really tackle that. They both really trump up the, like, love and, like, internal psychological struggle aspect of the story, which is also a really interesting part of the story. And I would say especially the 2002 version, really it's about the love between Kelvin and Rhea.
Yeah, I think, and that's maybe the unknowability of the planet is conveyed in the novel through very long academic passages about the field. There are ways that you could kind of talk about that.
And the 72 version does a little bit.
The 72 version has, at the beginning, if you've seen it, it has, like, they're looking at logs of conversations. They kind of render some of Burton's testimony in video form, and that's part of the briefing. But that is basically snipped out entirely from the 2002 version.
2002 feels much more Hollywood.
Yep.
It's like, they could not resist the temptation to just make this a satisfying arc. They give Calvin a much happier ending in a way.
Yes.
Like, he does remain on Solaris, but you get the sense that he still gets to be with Rhea. He's happy. Like it's like a weirdly tidy and pat ending, I would say.
It's basically like ending in heaven.
Yeah,
you know?
it's like, and Rhea tells him, he's like, "Am I dead or alive?" And she's like, We don't have to think about things like that anymore."
Yeah.
And it just feels too, like it's too satisfying.
Yes.
Whereas this is disturbing, and it should be.
Right. I think the 2002 version ends with that kind of pat ending. The 1972 version is maybe slightly closer to the sense of disconcertion of the ending of the book, but it's different. So in the 1972 version, they add in the beginning this kind of thing with Kelvin and his dad, and in his memory, in his dreams, he sees his mom, and then at the very end, he like goes down. But instead of seeing some random like kind of mimoid city, which is what Kelvin does in the book, he sees a recreation of his father's house, and his father, I think, won't have lived long enough to see him return. So he goes and he sees his dad, but then it's very disconcerting, like water is like pouring into the house. It's actually chilling and wonderful.
Yeah, I would say I struggled with that movie because I'm just not a huge fan of the Tarkovsky slow, lingering shots style. It's just not exactly my cup of tea. And there were moments that I thought was really effective, but then there were other moments like a 5-minute car ride sequence that just didn't. I just could not understand why that was in there. But the whole movie, there's this huge payoff, I would say, at the end, where the ending is so beautiful. And like the really ominous, like you said, the water kind of almost just out of place and like sort of pouring into the house, pouring over the dad.
The dad's not reacting because it's a
and the body language of Kelvin at the end, just sort of at his dad's legs, It's
holding him the way he holds the Hari copy earlier. Yeah.
A haunting image. And there are other haunting images throughout that treatment. I read that Lem was not happy with either adaptation. And I can see why, because again, I feel like they both sort of miss the central interesting question of the book.
Right. But I think it is true that thematically they don't delve into that unknowability thing, but I do think they're both interesting and good adaptations on their own.
And they both fill in some interesting things that I felt were missing from the book even.
Right.
Like I think that they really, the 2002 movie really asked that interesting question about the humanity of the copy.
Yeah.
And it really focuses on her as a character. It's like, what happens when you find yourself in this position? From her perspective, she's a person. She might be made of neutrinos, but she's still a person with a consciousness.
And unlike in the novel, in the 2002 version, we do get access to her memories.
She's a lot more fully carved as a person.
Yeah, we see his memories, we see her memories. They have a lot more scenes of their relationship together, which does, in fact, of course, contribute to it tilting more into the romance. But she's filled out, and then as you brought up earlier, I think the most important intervention is that the movie is like, you're just remembering Rhea in a certain way, and I'm limited by your memories of her.
Yeah.
But what if, and he says later, imagines that going back to Earth, and he imagines feeling haunted by the fact that he didn't remember her correctly. Mm-hmm. So that idea of, we don't have access to the real Rhea anywhere is present in the movie, which is an interesting intervention.
Mm-hmm. I would recommend, they're both interesting. They're both worth a watch.
Right. I will say both of them are uncomfortable with the beginning and the ending of the story.
Yeah.
Neither of them can deal with the way the novel starts, just like
in medias res.
Right. Landing, and both of them feel the need to have a preamble to tell us something about why he's going there.
I like the lack of preamble.
I like it better,
I also
too.
like that moment remember when Kelvin is like, okay, his first thought is, I'm crazy.
Yes.
I'm seeing hallucinations. So in order to establish what of this is real, I'm going to do this experiment. And then remember he does that, like he asks the computer to do some coordinates.
And he does it his own version, checks. And
and he does this mathematical stuff. And then it turns out that Snow did the same thing. That was cool.
Or somebody else did, right? Or another person had done that. Yeah, so somebody else has been checking.
But these are the little details that I think make this just such an interesting mood. This like, what can we trust? We can't trust anything.
I got really into the 1972 version.
I know, and I think you're more like patient than I am. I think I found it really beautiful. I will say, in parts, and then I felt it was excessive in other parts.
Yeah, I had a hard time with the first part of it. I was like, but But that, I don't know. I've just found it really pulled me in. I watched like the first part of it, and then I think I stopped during the car. There's a long car ride scene with
That's
Burton.
what really threw me, and that's toward the beginning of the movie. And
That's
I
tough.
almost honestly would have bailed, I think, if I weren't watching it for this club.
But then you would have
I'm
missed
glad I didn't. Yeah.
Because I think I think both movies do establish kind of a tone, and
Yeah.
like they have an atmosphere. But I just found the atmosphere created by the 1972 one to be really captivating.
And a lot closer to the book. It was
Right.
beautiful and really unsettling in parts. Like once he's actually on the Solaris station, I think from there, the movie is gorgeous, and I think it does really interesting things. That part where Rhea like consumes liquid oxygen, and then the resurrection of Rhea in the movie is really striking, and feels weirdly real. It's like surreal and real at the same time. Whereas it's a little too dramatized in Hollywood, I'd say, in the Soderbergh version. It's too trite.
And I think that like the endings, because we were saying the openings and endings are huge departures, plus the lack of the unknowability of the planet or of the ocean rather. But the endings, I think the 72 one, despite having the dad kind of concoction, it is more sort of emotionally, there's an effort to make it more emotionally satisfying than what actually happens, which is him just like sitting hoping for more cruel miracles in the book.
Well, I mean, it's a similar, I think it really captures it, because I think that image of him, on the Mimoid island, we do get that sense of sort of zooming out, seeing him probably going, like, destined to be alone on this planet eventually, hoping for cruel miracles. That's a very similar image and emotion and mood as to the 2072 or the 1972 version.
I was like 2072, and I was like, yes,
Yeah.
that one. No, I think that's right. I think it captures visually because in the novel, of course, we don't have access to people's emotions as easily or their internal monologues, so we can't get the first person thoughts of Kelvin. But it does replicate that. But we were talking about this because we just watched Solaris, the 2002 version, last night. There's something like them ending up together. I would have actually tolerated that, but there wasn't enough of a note of like, uh-oh. Because there's definitely an uh-oh note in the 1972 version with the like water pouring down into the island and the dad, and you're like, oh, Kelvin's frozen in his past traumas, which is what he is in the novel. But here it's like you can, don't worry, it's like a get out of free card. You just go to heaven and he's back with her, and it's like it's too clean. It's like
I think if I'm Lem and I'm writing this story, I would have been tempted, and I probably would have just given him Rhea at the end. I would have just let this character be with this copy, and that's already disturbing enough that he just relegates himself to this like planet with its cruel miracles.
Yeah.
And he never really, integrates back into real society. He never really deals with his grief. He's just here consoling himself with this simulacrum.
Right.
That's like already disturbing enough. To me, it's like even more disturbing that Lem snatches her away, makes him relive that same crisis of Rhea killing herself. And then now he's left with the double grief.
Right.
And I think it's a cool, I mean, it's like a bold decision. And that's what I don't like about the 2002 Solaris, is that it takes that double hit away and it gives him Rhea.
Right. And it doesn't trouble, sort of like, I guess you can make an argument with some of the music, but the way it's shot, it's just like, now we're in the place, because they also integrate the Dylan Thomas poem about like love or death shall have no dominion. So it's like, and then they got together again later, and they needed to sour that, because the novel's, like you said, double hit. It's like, it would be bad enough if he ended up with copy Rhea, but it's like, it's worse that it's like, he ends up with the hope that maybe one day he'll get another copy, or
like a copy of a copy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like hoping for a copy is where he lands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like trapped in a prism of grief and guilt.
He's a grief junkie.
Yes.
He just wants to wallow in it and not deal with it.
Right. Yeah. That's extremely depressing. But so it's just a little bit too pat. So of the two, I don't know. I really liked that 1972.
Yeah. I mean, it's Tarkovsky. It's going to offer something, and it's going to be beautiful in some way.
Right.
And it won't be for everyone, but I highly recommend if you enjoyed Solaris the novel, you should check out the movies, especially the Tarkovsky.
But as we've said, the Soderbergh makes a really interesting intervention in the novel.
I think they're both worth watching.
Yeah, they both are. It's like kind of the rare novel where there are two interesting. I guess this is true of a lot of Jane Austen novels, but like I feel like for a science fiction novel, you have like two really provocative and interesting takes on it that add to it.
But where there's actually still, I would say, room for a third.
Yes.
Excessive, maybe. But I still would love to see a third adaptation of this book that really asks the question about the unknowability of the alien intelligence.
It's like we're too afraid to really do this, and maybe the movies are both failing in that regard, like in the way we were talking earlier about not only are we looking into the stars to see ourselves, but we're reading about people looking into the stars to see about ourselves. So we're watching movies about that, where we were like reflecting our little human problems back, and we're sidestepping the issue of the more challenging issue of like if that's even possible to meet like a true other in space.
Yeah, like in this club we are taking a break from our everyday lives to read about other civilizations and we know we're also reading about ourselves.
I also realize now that I don't think we've ever introduced ourselves in the space of this video.
What are we?
Oh, we didn't say our names.
Oh, yes. By the way, I am Elle Cordova.
And I'm Grace Yost.
And this has been
This is like when you go to the movies now. Have you noticed this has happened in 2002 Solaris? These days when you go to the movies, commonly it's like a cold open instead of going and you see the credits and the title and the cast list and everything. They just wait till the very end and then they tell you the title and then the credits. Have you noticed that?
I like that.
You just want to wait. Let's not.
I know the title. I saw it on the sign.
I want there to be the title.
No,
but then they would list the cast. But now it's just like it's a cold open, and that's what we've done. So this has been Science Fiction Book Club.
Yes, it has. And then thank you for joining us. This was an interesting exploration of making contact with alien intelligence, and our next book next month is called Contact by Carl Sagan, which is one of my favorite stories, like movies of all time. I've always wanted to get around to reading the book, and here we are. The patrons chose it out of a list of great options.
Yeah, I don't think either of us have gotten the chance to read it.
No.
Both of us have seen the movie and love the
multiple
movie.
times for me.
Yes.
I love that movie. I love Jodie Foster. I love the character of Elle Arroway.
Yes.
So I'm really excited to spend more time with her in the book. And I know that there are massive differences between the book and the movie, and it would be really interesting to explore that. So join us next month in discussing Contact by Carl Sagan. In the meantime, keep looking up.
Keep looking up and happy Halloween.
Yes, happy Halloween.